Hello and welcome to Cosmic Emporium, and boy do we have a good show for you tonight. Geo is back co-hosting with me, and we have TargeT and Vern, and let's just talk a little bit about what's going on out there and what our response might be. So I'm going to introduce the crew here, and hello everybody. Why don't you say hello? Hello, Geo.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Good evening.
Good morning, good evening, whatever it may be after this recording. Yes.
Good day, night, everyone.
All right, so just to get a little bit started, we had a little bit of a pre-show discussion, we'll call it. and it's, I guess part of it is, we would like to get more voices on here. We're going to talk a little bit about that and just talk a little bit about some strategies. And one of the things we touched on is kind of like how a lot of people are wanting to kind of get out, so to speak. And my whole thing is, it's only because they've messed up the world so much that people seem to want escapism. My whole thing is, let's get the world right again so they're the ones that want to get out.
Can I start something here? I'd like to, there was something brought up just recently about, I'm going into the legal system here. I've got a couple of legal things happening at the moment. Now, within that, they've told me, like, you've got to get a lawyer, and I'm like, no, thank you. I'll just write it on a bit of paper. I meet myself within my sovereign right, give the authority, blah, blah, blah. And they said, no, you have to have it legally down. And I said, no, I don't. This is what I feel. This is what I believe. I'm quite sane. Blah, 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 blah. This is how I'll do it. Thank you. And they're like, no, you have to have legal representation to write this document. I'm like, no, I don't. So I'm sitting there. I have no idea, to be honest. And but I feel like I've lost a right at the beginning of that. Straight off the bat.
Interesting. So you're doing a little bit of a Freeman call, like up in. Go ahead.
Well, I'm seeing it on a micro scale for myself, but I'm also seeing the OPPT, the UCC filings, etc., that were done a few years ago. Yeah. I'm also seeing that starting to get back in the headlines a wee bit more. And when I see the restrictions on us in a legal way, right from our birth certificate, as most of us know about, right through to the simply writing a simple legal document, you've got to pay somebody to do it on your behalf. Yes.
And get it notarized and all these other things that they've incorporated into the whole jargon. And you're part of the Commonwealth, so I mean, you're right in the thick of it with us here in the West, as in the United States. So I would try to just strive to keep things as simple as possible, and I would instead of maybe engaging them with that. I mean, I understand what you're saying and how you questioned it, but I would look for this most simplest way of responding to anything that you're put to or put through.
I already know I've got no choice. I just voiced in my opinion, going, "Come on, why pay a couple of $100 for something that I can put on pay? I can just write it myself, me, not because of some lawyer saying it's okay."
Yes. Do you have paralegals there or something that's similar? Someone who can give you advice that's, of a much informal, if not cheaper way of getting,
I've basically had nothing to do with the legal system, thankfully. Even when I got divorced, there was no legal things involved at all.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky, I suppose. But I just see the frustration for a lot of people that are involved in it to whatever degree. It's just like, it's cutting them off completely from actually being able to be themselves.
This is the tyranny of the system.
Well, it's disempowering,
It's tyranny. No, before we had all these legal systems, I mean, we have more history on this planet living in, I mean, even when you look at like the megaliths and all those great cultures, they had ways, them quite, within themselves. They didn't have a whole bunch of legal rules and laws and stuff. People were free. This is all new to us, and it's just getting worse and worse. And everybody's made, oh, I feel safer with the law. That's because they don't have the ancestral memories of how we lived before this was here. And now we're convinced that we need it, or else we're going to fall into chaos. And all you have to look is all the great megalithic ruins and stuff. Those were not legal societies.
Well, there's
They
so
weren't
much
lawful
expression.
societies. They didn't function through law.
Yeah,
Because that's a new concept.
correct. Okay.
Well,
So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to take, Vern's issue and turn it into an issue we all face of the web of the patrix, that we think we can be in nature. We think we can do things. We bump into these invisible things called laws, and they're unholy.
Well, look at his first reaction. He felt right away, I should be able to do this, and they were telling him, no, you can't do this. The system is inherently against us, and we're told opposite of that. We're told it's there to support and protect us. And I think that's the very first step you have to take, is just recognize this is not here to help you. It's not here to help you.
Yeah,
exactly.
we're the government. We're here to help.
I would think, and I would advise that just watching some of my friends in the past, how they dealt with local governments and court proceedings and whatnot. There is a simple way to deal with a lot of this stuff. You have to do your own work. But a lot of this information is available online. And ways and means of going about it. But I like Vern's attitude and the way he approaches things in general, just by questioning. I would just try to make things simple. And I know that sounds like, well, what do you mean by that? I mean, if there's a way of speaking to someone directly, or going there in person to deal with something that has come up in your life, an issue with local, I don't want to say government, but local individuals that you're dealing with, that's the best approach. I think a lot of people have been turned off about talking to people, meaning if even when a simple auto accident, immediately people don't even, and I say people, I mean, in general, don't even see how the other person might be if they're injured or not. They're quiet, and they just, deal with their lawyer or the police or whatever. But I try to be genuine, try to be human, and react the way you feel. I mean, obviously you have to watch sometimes what you say, because you can put yourself in a precarious situation. But I think it really starts with just trying to have a human reaction. And,
well, hold on. How do we do that? How are we both authentic and also self-preservative?
Yeah.
How do
Well, it's getting easier for me. But I've had a little more time, to deal with these things, and I've gone, had more examples in my life of issues with legalities. So the older I've gotten, it's been easier for me to separate myself and realize that if I go down this legal path, this is what's going to happen, and you can almost see how it's going to unfold. And then, and if I do this reaction, the human reaction, so I would try to blend things. I'm not saying you need to go one way or another, but I would try to blend it, because it becomes more authentic then if you react in a human way, the way you feel.
From what I get, Gio, if I want to fight the system in any way, I have to learn the system to be able to fight the system, to shut down the status quo, which is
true,
playing their game. And what's the use of playing their game when their game's been, the people that are playing the game at the lower levels, they're just your lawyers, your good family people, a lot of them, and they're being held up by the.
And that's very true. That's very true, because the individuals I've met that have done what you're suggesting have had to learn the system, how to avoid it, or not, how to behave in court, not how to respond. So you're absolutely right there. I don't know. It's very complex. It is, obviously, and they like it this way because and I say they, I mean the establishment, the system, the legal system. A lot of times they won't even allow you to speak in court or approach the court unless you do jump through the hoops, as you're saying. So, but this is a big topic. But there's plenty of examples of individuals that have done this that we can learn from, and you can learn from it even on YouTube, how some of these types have dealt with the law. I could give you some names, but it's probably under Freeman, of free men. The Canadians have a few individuals have pursued this, but. I do like that though. I do like the idea of first thinking it out and not to get nervous. In the past, I used to get very upset when I got legal documentation in the mail, anything that might be challenging me, or especially if I was dealing with medical, because I was feeling sick to start with, and now I got to deal with this insurance company or this or that, and automatically it put me on the alert and started stressing me out. And I found that the best approach has always been giving yourself a little time, to bring it in, look at it, and figuring a strategy instead of reacting. Now, some people, are obviously married. They have wives. They can, or husbands. They can collaborate with. One person's better than the other. But yeah.
The one thing that I'm thinking that might be a potential for me to do is to look into can we start doing that legal documentation ourselves between peoples. You know what I mean? Like I can sit there with TargeT and say, I want to, just for instance, say buy 2 horses off you. We're going to have to ship them over to New Zealand, the special horses, etc., and do all the legal documents to some degree to myself. But even then, I'm just trying to pick something out. Like if we can start doing our own legal documents somehow without needing to be part of the system. And when
it's a change of, I mean, even when let's take your problem, Vern. Your problem is basically all of our problems. I mean, what you're facing is something we all are up against. We're just not currently, one of those webbings hasn't gotten around us. And for me, I mean, in the short run, yes, we need strategies against the system, but the long run strategy is that system either has to go away completely or just apply to corporations and other non-human entities, because that's what that court system is. It's it's non-human. And then we go back to contracting amongst ourselves, and if we get to, it comes down to how much integrity we have, to how much we can contract and come to agreements ourselves without lawyers and things like that. The only reason we have lawyers is because we don't want to get screwed by our fellow human. And when humans stop screwing each other, we can actually conduct business without police backing. You understand? There's a whole mindset of what we need to conduct with each other. But if, Vern's problem won't go away, we all share it until we break free of that system, that net. And to me, part of that is, again, there's that we're under this UCC law. So let corporations, all the non-human beings, let them walk under that system and let human beings have their own system. But we have to come to an agreement, or it's just us saying this and everybody else going, no, 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 no. And without a consensus amongst ourselves, we might as well just stop the conversation now.
Yeah.
Well, for myself, we basically know that corporations are human entities under law. You did know that, yep.
Well, they're legal fictions.
Yeah.
No, they're human entities under law. Corporations.
They're persons. Not humans.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean,
Human
I'm
doesn't
talking
come into a
about
person.
flesh and blood. I mean flesh and blood.
How
Okay.
about, I got a random question for you. Are your lawyers in Australia, or I'm sorry, New Zealand, are they under the bar system? Do they have to be bar
Oh
accredited?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you're under the Crown, so you fall under England, so you're screwed.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
Commonwealth.
even for myself, I was sitting there going, well, what I can do, the legal thing I have is actually with my partner, and it's a very simple thing. But I'm sitting there going, well, let's write something down, but let's also voice it. Now let's record it, and if things go pear-shaped in the future, we've got it sitting there, and we've got the expression of both of us, and it's coming out of that humanness. We've got our expression at that time may change in the future, but in the future we can go back to that binding agreement, verbally and written, and sort it out from there. And if we need somebody to come in and be to mediate, then we might go looking for somebody to help us.
I thought about that, and one of the things I thought about was like, let's say you record something, upload it to YouTube as private, because that way you get a timestamp on it.
Good idea.
No, the
Yeah.
best way to do it is to use the blockchain with Bitcoin, because it's once you enter something into the blockchain, that's why Bitcoin is so secure. It's there forever. Everybody gets a copy of it. The entire blockchain is altered. People use this to author books, and like, I think that's the future of contracts. If you want to have a contract, everybody should know about it, and everybody should have access to it. And that's how we all verify it, because we all agree, oh, this is the contract I have. Does that agree with your contract? Yeah, it's the same thing. And so, yeah, that's where I think cryptocurrencies are really going to change our world in the future. But that's a side point.
That's a good point too. Yeah. Well, I still like the idea of recording it because and keeping it on the shelf, whether it be a will or a even dealing with property, something like that. That's a very good idea. And then if it ever gets down to a point of contention, at least you have something to show. And a lot of times the courts will recognize that if there's nothing else, if there's no paper trail or anything. So.
Right. So in a broader sense, it's always good to have evidence and to be able to back your argument up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very salient point for a lot of what the community that we participate in is facing right now, especially with the Bill Ryan versus Corey Goad versus, all of these things we're going through, and we're seeing more and more things come light. And what it really comes down to in my mind is how authentic are you? How truthful have you been throughout the entire process? Because those of us who've been there, we've seen the story change. We've seen it evolve.
Interesting.
One of the interesting things I thought was that Cosmic Emporium I did with Phil B. Only because, I mean, as I'm trying to move forward, Phil B, I thought, was just a great, very valid, and certainly passionately put about that he has certain issues with in this case, Bill Ryan. And of course, I want to move ahead, but Phil is not alone. I mean, the chances are, I'm not saying that my concept of, let's just move forward, and then in the moving forward, we find out whether or not people are who they say they are. Because we all have pasts, and we all start, but not everybody wants to do that, and Phil is not alone.
Yeah, but and I understand where Phil's coming from, and I was fortunate enough to listen to your group the other evening. I know TargeT listened as well with CW's Chander, and I think a lot of good points were made. But in regards to this whole sideshow, as I'm starting to see it now, we do need to move on. If people want to argue these issues and keep these threads going about how Bill Ryan's done me wrong, or what happened to me at Project Avalon, or whatever form or whatnot. We really need to move on from this discussion, and I'm very happy that Bill has finally resurfaced and did this interview with the Dark Journalist, and that's great. But it really doesn't do anything for me other than just satisfy some of his followers. as I suggested, I think it'd be nice if Bill would maybe come out in the public more and do some podcast, maybe lead them himself, interview some people that he finds of interest. But that's for him and PA to do, not for any of us to worry about. I know that TargeT's a member there, and there's many people that listen to these things that we do at Cosmic Emporium, and I'd want to see us all, kind of get together in a sense of being at the same table. But there's so many other issues, and this legal thing is one of them. We need to really just move on from this whole conversation and start addressing some of these things that are really happening in the world. This agenda that seems to be continuing globalist led. This collectivism that's happening. While all the Trump show continues, and with the MSM, and every day we're being besieged with this. Quietly, a lot of things are happening. They're trying to pass trade agreements that are going to pretty much make a lot of this irrelevant, especially government. They're trying to make government irrelevant in many ways. I find, like a sideshow, and they're putting me off from it. What was the quote I gave you earlier, Rad, that James Corbett and Freeman Fry were discussing in their recent video?
If you gave me a quote, I can go retrieve it.
Well, one of them they used is resistance without anger, and anarchy without chaos was one of the main ones. And that's where that resistance without anger is very important, because we got to stop being so upset about stuff that really isn't that important.
We won't be able to think straight. I mean, anybody, if you're angry, you're adrenalized. If you're adrenalized, blood has been pulled out of your frontal cortex and put into your muscles. If you think with your muscles, then everything is fine being angry. But I don't think very well from my muscles. And I know the most concerning thing from the last Dark Journalist interview was Corey's kids. That was like, ooh. And then we've been all doing a little paying attention. And something seems to be very organized around this, and it's a cause of some concern for me.
Yeah, I can see that. Obviously, that David and Guy have really thought this out, and they are almost like the controllers. They're a few steps ahead of the alternative community. And the interesting thing to me all along is they really haven't responded to much of any of this community stuff, meaning the alternative community forums. They're out to get a whole new group of individuals that are awakening to the conspiracy theories and everything. And I'm seeing it even in my local community. I can go anywhere pretty much, and even with X-ray techs or whoever, and engage in conspiracy theories. So it's kind of left the forums at the gate. And so they're going after a bigger market. And a lot of these young people, I guess Corey kids followers, the new generation of those going to contact in the desert and all these other, summer fairs, they're going to be the ones that, they have the money to spend and buy the books and everything. So David Wilcox and his Gaia.com have really moved forward. So going after Corey Good and these new Corey's children or the young ones, at least on the forum level, is really not going to do much. If we don't unite as a community, we're going to be more and more marginalized to the side, because we don't even agree on allowing each other to interact with each other on forums, without moderation and banning and whatnot. So we need to really rethink that.
Beyond even that, we have to recognize that even if you take Project Avalon, arguably one of the larger forums that is in this community. What numbers do they have? 2,000 members, maybe?
Oh, they have upwards of probably 10,000, but only on
Okay,
any
so
13,000.
nothing, right? 13,000, sure, nothing. What is that? 0.01% of the United States. So we have a community, yeah, and there is potential there, but there's no way that we are an influence on anything that somebody of the marketing level, that the Corey's kids and the guy at
Yeah.
TV, they are looking so far beyond us.
Yeah.
We're a weed in the yard, but the yard is there. And you ignore the weed.
10,724. I don't want to be fake news.
Yeah, sure. It's not a big number.
The thing is, all along through the last 7 or 8 years, people have moved on. So many members of the forum have moved on to, they've taken what they needed and moved on. And there's a constant influx, obviously, of new people coming into the alternative community. But as you say, the way we're going about it is not going to really make a large dent or increase it in anything.
Well, we kind of need to step beyond our own drama. We have some personalities that came from our community, and we can really get sucked into that and focus on that a lot. Or we can look at the larger scope where tactics that are being used against this community are reflective of tactics that are being used against everybody.
The whole general.
And pointing this out in any level, in any applicable way, is really important in my mind, because once you show the discrepancies and the MO of the pattern, then you can start to put that mask across other situations, across geopolitical issues and stuff like that. And I think that will be helpful.
Yes. I'd like to see forums go back to having guests. Now, I don't know if you all are aware of this. I know that Todd had that for a while, and I know PA had that where you didn't have to join, that you were allowed to post if you were a guest. Now, of course, there was moderation, but moderators could oversee it, but you were allowed to at least come on and post things. That might be a good step. You might call it going backwards, but it might alleviate some of this. And I'd like to see if it's not done. I mean, sort of like what we're doing here now. If Mr. Ryan or his some of his members over there that you're part of would start doing a similar type of podcast with members, and then we could start, blending it together a little bit, mixing it up,
riffing off each other.
Yeah, that would be that's the ultimate goal I have when I thought about this with Rad back at the end of last year, was the possibility of maybe finding a way to uniform, uniting us back together and breaking from some of this rhetoric. And when I saw this stuff coming with Corey and continuing, I just knew that, this is good form drama. It does, and this thing with Dark Journalists has brought Mr. Ryan out in the public again. But it really, if people think about it, it's only helping him. It's only making him significant again, and for whatever that means. And maybe it'll help his donations and keep the forum going. But in the long run, it's not going to help anything like Gaia is doing. It's not going to make any big difference. Good.
I found it kind of amusing. I mean, I don't know if you saw, there was a video posted of who is it? Corey Good going to a vegan cooking thing or something. It was a relatively short video, and it starts off with David Wilcock being introduced. He goes, "Am I looking fat?" And he's like, and it's like, I want to say, "Yeah, David, you're looking a little on the pudgy side there." But hey, I guess you're reading well. God bless you, brother. Anyway, but it was interesting because I kind of skipped through. I mean, it was really kind of like a little bit of like a spa log or something. But towards the end, it's him and Stacy in the car, and they're having a conversation. And if I wanted to be a little bit unkind, I would pull apart some of the language I heard in their car, but I don't want to. I want to move to the end, where it closes with David Wilcock farting. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
That video closes with him farting. I mean,
I haven't seen it. Why don't you post it in the notes so others and as well as myself can see this? This might be interesting, but that make note of that if you don't mind.
Yeah, it was hysterical. I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe that's part of capturing the youth audience, farting or something. I'm not sure
It's
what the
making it more
strategy is.
human. Yeah, it's making it all more human. Um,
Well, there's a big thing that's slowly coming into the world, and that's being as children. I'm not talking being children. I'm saying being as children. So when you hear somebody farting and everybody laughing, I haven't seen it yet, but what I envision there is like I'm a very serious dragon as such. I'm very serious, and I've only really started to start laughing about 10 years ago. I remember having a good 20-second laugh, and I just about seized all my stomach muscles. You know, I was a very serious person, and I started to learn to laugh again. It was actually through watching Seinfeld. My brother would try to talk me into it for years to watch it, and I finally watched it, and I started hurting my stomach muscles. You know, it was and I have gone from strength to strength. But I do sit there and go, gee, I haven't laughed for a month or two. I better start laughing.
You know,
well, I only watched.
Yeah, that's wonderful. you know, a lot of people might criticize me because I put silly things on things that I post, but I do believe in laughter, and you know that as a, and I have to laugh every day. Otherwise, you know, I don't feel right. And after being, you know, participating like we do, or dealing with personal issues in the daytime, I just need to laugh. And that's why I always try to put comedy, whether it's mainstream media or whatnot. It doesn't really matter. If it makes you laugh, it makes you laugh. And that's what's most important. We have to also laugh at ourselves. And believe me, I
think it's a sign of maturity. I mean, to me, you know, it's kind of like, if you're a fully formed, nice old soul, you can saw the cosmos, and then you can today pull my finger, and I'll tell you what I saw. I mean, that's the complete person, in my opinion.
Yeah. And you got the other side of it as well, like some of the cries I've had in the last 10, 15 years as well. Like, my God, it's such a healing thing. I'm not talking going to a funeral. I'm just talking about going into a process for myself, and actually having a cry. And then, you know, the tear ducts are, you know, it's a releasing mechanism.
Yes.
It's just transmutation process on a personal level, and that macro level as well. You know, a good cry can be so damn good, and I'm learning that one still. The laughing and the crying. I'm very good at being still, but I have real problems getting my laughing hat on and getting into my emotions in a sensitive and vulnerable way. And that's just with myself. You know, I'm learning to get better with groups of people, and it's so that's a real free man thing that I find as such.
You and TargeT are fathers, and you have, you know, young ones.
I'm a dad too.
Well, I am too, but we have our children are older. But that maybe yours isn't as old as mine.
No, mine will be 21 in November.
But that helps a lot too, doesn't it? But I was mentioning those two because they have children that live within their home, and that really goes pretty far with you know, the emotions. You know, it's very easy for me to have a good cry. I'm Italian, so I'm very emotional anyway, and so it's easy for me to cry. But I do have friends that, you know, they don't even go there, or they won't go there around other people, and I'm sorry for that. I really feel bad that. But having children around you and being able to laugh at their silliness, if not what they find. But it's also good for a parent to laugh and show these emotions around their children, right, guys?
Very.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So
it's when you're a role model, it just allows them to. We see it with all our children. I don't want to speak for you, but when we do something and we see our child or children doing exactly the same thing or saying exactly the same thing the next day or an hour later. And you know when you've had a bit of an emotional, grumpy outburst and said the swear word, and then you listen to your child having a grumpy, emotional outburst saying exactly the same swear word the next day or week, and you know that you're emotionally guiding them for the rest of their lives with your role modeling of your emotions. The first time my oldest boy seen me cry was when he was probably 10, and that was oh God, that was watching Oprah Winfrey. Something to do with I know but watching Oprah Winfrey, and it was a very special story, and I cried, and my son's sitting there going, "Why are you crying?" And I didn't know how to even tell him why I was crying. I was only learning at that time to get into allowing my emotions to come up and spill, where they'd always been suppressed. So it was, and I see him now. He can, he's in the 20s now, and he's better at it now. And I know that had a massive impact on him at the time. That you only cry if you get hurt or you're somebody dies, basically. And all of a sudden, here was a grown man and his father crying, and so it was a huge impact. It allowed him to share and cry a lot better over the years, I feel.
Yeah.
I used to cry
he saw
during
the out from the stereotype, the archetypes that we get stuck, especially as men, where we're supposed to be strong all the time and emotions are not,
Yeah.
So by doing that, you showed him that there is an out, and that's awesome. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
TargeT, I was wondering, I was just looking, just for that video, and I can't find the Bill Ryan, Corey Good thread on Project Avalon. I'm wondering, and I couldn't see it, usually it's not active, and I went to the hotter, the ones that are usually underneath there, and I can't seem to find it. I wonder if somehow it was removed from public view.
We'll check.
I doubt it. They would ever remove it.
No, they're there.
Okay, good.
It might have gone, it might have slipped to a second or third page. They move pretty quickly over there, so it could be a second or third, or maybe even a fourth page.
So we're used to the fact, I guess, that sometimes when you have a YouTube channel, there are actually kind of bot trolls. I'm wondering if there aren't what we'll call bot fairies. In other words, the ones that put glowing things for you. Oh, like I think it was it TargeT that said earlier. It was these really simplistic concepts. No,
go to Cosmic Disclosure, look at her newer videos, and look at the comments, and tell me it would apply to anything that anybody ever does. If you fall downstairs, the comment would apply. They're so vague. It's like 4 words. And these are videos that within hours have 500-600 views. The numbers don't line up with the activity. It all looks weird to me. It all looks weird. It all looks fake. The description of her video says one thing, then what she talks about is another thing, and half of the time is about a book that's coming out or a speaking engagement, or it feels so plasticky and fake. And I think that's an important thing to point out, and something we need to recognize and call out, and not let these people continue.
Is this that young lady that Rad that you brought to our attention? The one that changed her hair color?
Yes. And what was interesting, and he makes a very valid point, because one of the videos I watched where she's in a car, she's already been to it, and the name of the video is Why I Went to It, and she doesn't tell us why she went there. So I understand what TargeT's saying, there's these things. So I was listening, because I wanted to examine her language. Why did you go? And she seemed to talk about anything except why she really was there.
What I see, it's a lot of fast speak. It's a lot of, con men do that. How they're articulate and they can speak rapidly, and they change topics so quickly that you kind of get in. You have to almost stop and be like, what exactly was said here in this conversation? And that's how those videos are. They're confusing as fuck. They don't follow a narrative. Except for pushing products. And aside from that, it's hard to follow the line of thought, and it's nothing useful.
Do you think she's being pushed by some unseen,
No. This is pure opportunistic money. It's money.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the honey's out there. This is a natural bee response. But I think that once the bees get to the honey, there might be a little bit of a greeting crew.
I'm trying to find her. I know you had
well probably there is, and there's probably the natural. Everybody, once you commit to an idea, you're naturally going to defend it, and maybe even beyond the point where you normally wouldn't rationally do the defense that you are, but committing to an idea is a very serious step for us humans. Once we commit to something, we'll defend it beyond the point of rationality. So, and I think that is possibly what is happening with these two individuals.
I saw with Jordan, I guess a video he put out on Saturday, and there were a few people like, "Come on, Jordan, you're the goods, like don't fall for this." And that's exactly again how I think we want to be. Is we don't want to be quote unquote accusatory. We're seeing things, we're concerned, we're speaking of our concerns, and this is not like. I think everybody knows what I mean. We're not really trying to be mean-spirited. We're just trying to, do some hygiene here. We're trying to have a little bit of immune response. The first thing an immune response just does is it kind of tingles and says, let's keep an eye here. It's not about, it's not, you don't know. But there's signals coming from there and just go, okay, let's just see how this plays out. And to me, it's about vigilance and not about accusation.
Well, right now, the only thing we have to act on is what they give us. So all we're really trying to say is be self-aware. Look at what you're putting out and look at what you say and make sure it lines up, because right now it's not.
So this young lady is Divine Frequency that we're discussing. Okay. Yeah, I found the rundown that you gave in the Mystic Brew video of her YouTube history very interesting. The transformation, and it is interesting to me how she kind of got captured with in this this contact in the desert umbrella, as well as it's pointed out that she had some religious issues in some of her early videos, and she seems like a very primed candidate to, what do you say, fall into all this. She's young. She's looking at alternative ways to expressing herself, but she's doing it by things that are of interest to her, and she's looking at ways where she can maybe slide in. To
look, that's one point of view, but Rad also had a very good point in his videos. She's hawking books. And she's hawking alien, whatever, History Channel shit, right?
Yeah,
she's actively advertising for large corporations.
Well, there's
no way you do that for free.
Well, that's why I was saying, did someone approach her? Did they see her and say, "Hey, are you, is someone out there scouting talent, so to speak?" And they're looking for these young Corey kids, as you guys are talking about, to what do you say, bring others in.
If you're speaking in an advertising sense, then yeah, I agree. I do agree. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
I don't want to like the they that are them. There's a conspiracy. No, I think this is much more shallow. These are young people that were approached with a very interesting prospect, and probably are going with it. And I don't fault them at all. But it's disingenuous, and I think it's very easy to see through. And we need to point that out for some people.
I think what we also have to point out, is a friend of mine who pointed it out to me, because she said, you should take that video down. It's like, no, she didn't understand the community I made it for. But she made a very good point, okay? As I forget, Gianna, I think is her name. As she pointed out, she lived at Rendlesham Forest during that period, in that area. And Nick Pope had just come out with a book. This book is brand new. She's not hawking an old book. She's hawking a new book. So the fact that her family and her were there, and he has a new book out, there is some very non-nefarious good marketing going on here. And again, if we want to be taken serious, we better bring all the facts and be, and again, just be gentle. And it's just a matter of caring about them also. I mean, it's not just about the community, it's them. Of course, they're allowed to do whatever they want, but we have to, the promotion of the Nick Pope book by her is, man, that's like almost genius. And I don't mean evil genius, I mean like good business genius.
Yeah. Now, she was a very young girl, obviously, when this all happened. She had to be maybe a child of maybe, 6, 7, when, over in England, when this Air Force base, Royal Air Force Base incident occurred.
Rendlesham, yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting in itself. Did she remember? I mean, obviously she remembered something if this is all true. Maybe her parents told her about it. Maybe it was a talk within the local community, the village, and maybe it stuck with her, and maybe it started an interest in ufology, and of course, yeah.
I have an interesting story. The Benny and Barty Hill story. I think everybody's kind of one of the first abduction. That book was called Incident at Exeter. I had at that time, and even now, I have maternal family that has been living in Exeter for many, many years. So the incident at Exeter not only affected Barney and Betty Hill, it affected Exeter.
Yeah, the community, right.
Okay, my aunt had pictures in her backyard with some lights, that you could see over the thing. I mean, I saw the pictures that my aunt had taken. So this is, again, so this everything about her being there, Nick Pope, releasing a book,
yeah.
The fact that he's tied in with this, there is a lot of completely above board, even wholesome, good things going on. But with that said, that's a perfect setup for the more devious, and I'm not talking about Jordan or Gianna being the devious ones.
Yes.
I've got a couple of questions there. Do you know who was driving whose car it was they drove, hers or his?
What's that?
When this young lady went to contact, is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah. If I recall, when Jordan and her were speaking, didn't he say they drove there together?
Yes, they did.
Okay, so it's really interesting. I mean, I don't know if they left together, because she made that video when she was leaving, and if Jordan was there, he was pretty darn quiet.
I'm just interested to know who was driving, whose car it was.
It looked like she was, when she made that video, at least the comments in the car, it looked like she was pulled over. The car wasn't moving. So I'm assuming that maybe she made the contact after she got there. And she made the, beginning of the video, or the first video, on the way there, maybe pulled to the side of the road.
Just a side note, with the amount of makeup she had on, there's no way she was doing that outside of an air-conditioned environment. So I'm sure it was inside of a car that had been running for air conditioning.
Yeah, I'm really amazed you caught all this, Rad. And you filled in some gaps that I had with the story that you covered on your previous video, and of course I looked at her material and I found it. This is. But I want to be honest with you. I've seen similar things. It's kind of funny that over the years there were documentaries made of his SETI Ranch, and there was couples that have come up there. As a matter of fact, a couple documentarians that are friends of mine live down in Oregon, who made a video. They made a similar type of evolution into some of this. And so it's interesting how people are drawn into it. And I've had a few friends that I've made over the years that have made similar videos of going up to a SETI and what they were going to do. And it got them interested in making videos. So there is a familiar thread there that could be innocent enough. But going to contact in the desert, to me, is not an innocent thing. And it's a big event. It's got a lot of personalities. It's a lot of hype. I've never been there, but I know many people that have. James was just there, obviously, and Michael Tellinger, as you know, and it goes on and on and on. and they've talked to me and told me what goes on, and I know what goes on even at the conferences at SETI. So it's a big party, pretty much. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, obviously, on the talks and everything. But at nighttime and during the sky watches and whatnot, there's a lot of intermingling, getting familiar with each other, drinking, whatever. So there's a lot to all this. So and after seeing it, someone posted a video of the older couple that produces this contact in the desert. I'd never seen it before. Someone on the forum produced it, and these
I watched it.
Yeah, these two are characters in themselves. The money that's being made here, obviously, is incredible. I mean, I would imagine, someone putting on at one event and getting a piece of the pie could live pretty well for a year. So, this is what kind of makes me feel a little creepy now, in posting things about, I won't post things about contact in the desert in the sense of, like live recordings and stuff, because to me, it's all hyped and selling stuff.
Well, how does that not match the pattern that has always existed? How is that not the same thing that always happens? Something happens, it's cool, it's breaking ground, it gets co-opted, and it goes to shit.
Yeah, and I have to say that I'm partly guilty of that too, because working, with SETI, that the yearly conferences and some of the workshops and everything, I found myself falling into that. It was a churning out of a product every year, even though pretty much what happens at a SETI is individual. It's personal and individual, and James pretty much doesn't have a lot to do with those that come to visit there. Matter of fact, a lot of people don't even see him. So I can honestly say that the SETI experience is in and of itself separate from James Gillian. The workshops, the conferences, the special one-on-ones, things like this, it all falls into that same categories that you're speaking of, TargeT. So I agree 100%. That's why I've kind of pulled back, and that's one reason why I moved on from the ranch, as a lot of other people have, because it is what it is. I mean, James is there, he's a steward of the property, but it's not necessarily the ranch that's producing this phenomena. It's the surrounding area of Mount Adams, the mountain and the communities around it. And it has not necessarily everything to do with the SETI Ranch. It has to do with the greater community and phenomena of that that area, that particular area. So, but they're kind of doing the same thing with the desert, around where what is it called? Burning. What is it called? Burning Tree? Is that where it's at?
Burning Man.
Burning Man.
Oh, Burning Man. Yeah, no. They were at Joshua Tree.
Joshua Tree. That's it. That's where it's at. So, but it every year it gets bigger. Every year it gets So it's a circus, as I've called it in the past. It becomes a UFO circus every year. And,
it's like a traveling medicine show.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I still recommend people, if they get a chance, if they can afford it and want to go camping for a weekend and they're out here in the Northwest, to go up to SETI. It's very inexpensive, and you won't necessarily have to be in touch with any of these people for that experience. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see something either. I mean, a lot of people want to believe that something happens every night, every day there. It doesn't necessarily happen that way. But for the most part, if you go for a few days, something's going to happen. The big draw for the SETI has always been that you're called there, and meaning that something calls you there. Something drew me across the country and got me to go there with my friend, like Vern from New Zealand, who came all the way from New Zealand. And we were going up to the Northwest, and we decided to go visit there. So it was a calling. But I haven't got the calling to go to contact in the desert. And for that matter, even the secret space program conferences or any of these big outlets, I haven't got any of those calls. But this young lady's interesting, and she is she's definitely worth keeping an eye on. We'll see where she goes with this.
When Rad done the Mystic Brew when he did his investigation on her, I sort of said, "Oh, let's go back a wee bit and have a wee look on Jordan Souther's YouTube channel. I think it only goes back 4 months from memory, and I watched some of the earlier stuff, and I've watched most of his latest ones. So I wanted to get a gauge of where his most leanings are, and it is exposing Pizzagate, Petagate, and what's happening in the world, and giving his assumptions or perceptions of what's happening in the mainstream and etc. Just the last 3 weeks, he started to throw a few more things that he's into the David Wilcock material a wee bit. And then as we got closer to Contact in the Desert, then we had more of the Corey Goody stuff come out, or talking about that side of it more, building up to saying that he would be probably interviewing Corey Goody, etc. Then the Contact in the Desert actually happening. So when he's there, the first 2 things he puts up is Stillness in the Storm, and the other dude. And I'm assuming that he's got other stuff that he's going to put out over the next week or so. But he has gone from a very, very centered, wanting to get the truth out on certain things and giving his perception, which is also a young person's perception. A lot of people are putting the dots together by what he's giving his dots together as, and collecting an audience. And I think when he hit that magic number in his subscriber base, soon after that, we started to do some really good stuff. When he was talking about is Trump and whatever Putin trolling the world, that was his biggest hit counter anyway, 70 or 80,000 hits. Sorry?
It was perceptive. It was brilliant. And I agree with him on that. I mean, actually, almost on everything that Jordan has been saying, as far as of the geopolitics, I mean, I'm so on board with the general way he's casting things. I think it's quite brilliant. And so, again, it's just, I think it's more of a concern about something that seems to be brewing that's not brewing from Jordan or Gianna, that they could be getting pulled into. And I always remember, he's a single father. He has responsibilities.
Yeah. Well, with Gianna, or Divine Lady, she's just come on the scene. That's why I asked whose car was it? Who was driving the car, and whose car was it? Has she come on the scene, been planted, just looking at the options and what the potentials are? People are maybe seeing that, wow, he's actually doing a good job. He's doing his centered stuff on things that need to get out there, and the young ones need to hear. But all of a sudden, he's got her coming in. I don't know if there's anything going on there. I'm just putting that I have no problems with Jordan Souther being of the opinion of David Wilcock and Goody, etc. like that. That's I believe will be his own personal journey, just as it's mine or anybody else's that looks at that material. David Wilcock gets a big pat on the back for work already done, just like Ike, etc. The new thing that's coming out now is the unbelievable. The new things that's coming out now is the new people don't know what a lot of us here with 10, 20, 30 years experience of seeing people come and go, the bullshit artists, the people that have been planted, the people that are causing distraction. They're unaware of that yet, and they're going to have their learnings on that. At the moment, I keep hearing that. I liked it when you said before, we're left in the starting blocks. In many ways, it's probably a good thing, because with Gaia TV, what they're doing is they're going to the audience the audience is people are looking at conspiracy theories. People are being, they've been bullshitted. They know they've been bullshitted. They're hearing stuff about Vietnam. They're hearing stuff about the Russian revolution. They're hearing all this stuff, and they want what's up to date. And the only thing that's being provided that's sort of up to date is what's happening now with Trump and Putin behind the scenes, etc. Clinton, Pizzagate, Pettergate, Blue Avians, etc. And that's what they're going to be fed on at the moment. And while they're being fed, they are learning to become self-aware in a hard way or an easy way.
Yes, I agree totally. I really do. I mean, actually, that's what I had kind of said. You know, when I heard him come, you know, out and really support it, I said, "Good, go to." I'm looking forward to him going there because I want him to be close and hope that, you know, maybe he'll get a vibe. And then I wanted to listen to what he had to say when he came back, and it seemed like he really enjoyed being there. And what was interesting, Cliff High put out a 35-minute video today. And of course, the first 20 minutes was devoted to kind of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and things. But at the last 15 minutes, he switched the conversation to this whole Corey Good, contacting the desert stuff and the Blue Avians. And he's saying, you know, what he does is, you know, he part of his algorithms or whatever he has looks at language. And he's saying that right now with this current rush of woo, of like what he calls like, you know, woo, you know, lost woo woo or just real woo woo. He says he says you guys are messing up my data streams with all of this gibberish. He goes, you know, there was always a little bit of gibberish. He goes, but the gibberish has jumped off of the charts. And he goes, you guys are screwing up my readings.
That says a lot. I wish he would have advertised or put something in his thumbnail about that. You know, you have to really, and I generally always listen to Cliff. I would have loved to have known that. I'll go back and look at it. I know the video you're talking of. But it's too bad he didn't point that out, because that's pretty much my take with the Corey Good stuff. It's gibberish. And when I even try to watch anything that Corey's done recently, it's almost like I get I don't want to say negative, but I get almost like Corey's not even there. It's almost like Corey doesn't want to be there. It's like he's doing it for obviously money or obligation contract, as we all know, which brings me back to this Gaia thing, you know, subscription thing. Most people don't want to put that money out for a subscription, especially for a year, $100 a year, or now maybe some will engage for a month or so, or, you know, but I find it interesting that they brought all this talent in, everyone from Sean Stone to David Wilcox and George Norrie and everyone else. I mean, everyone that's anybody pretty much is part of the Gaia.com thing. So it makes me really wonder how long Corey's going to be vibrant for them to even push or at least keep under contract. I'd love to see what these contract terms are, but they're looking. Obviously, they must be looking for other people, and the Corey kids obviously will demonstrate some talent for them to go after. There'll be people.
Let's roll back 1 second on that. So, Sather's put out a video 12 hours ago, and I think it's amazing.
Who?
Destroying the Illusion. Jonathan Sather, I think. Jordan.
Oh,
Sather,
Jordan.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Sorry.
So 12 hours ago, he put out a video, and the entire video is a book sale for his upcoming book that he all of a sudden is authoring after coming out of the blue onto the secret space UFO community, and now he's co-authoring a book with a lot of names that I am now going to question very heavily, just because they're involved with him. I think the MO is so tired and so overdone, and right now we're seeing some really, really, really sloppy work. And if we're ready to look at it and follow it through, I think we're going to uncover a lot of shit because of this.
Sloppy slick.
Why would you? How obvious is that? Your first video when you're back from this conference, you're selling me a book, and that's not even what the title or description is about, but that's what the video is about.
Yeah. That's
So
a little
again, double
obvious.
talk is happening, bullshit's happening. It seems so fucking obvious to me right now. And the vapid empty comments, the weird unrationally high view counts, there's a lot of stuff there that seems very plastic and very injected.
Well, this in a way is very good because I'm learning some new stuff here, and obviously we're all learning something as this is moving along. And I really enjoy hearing you guys speak of this because I can't catch it all, and I don't think anyone can. So I think these interchanges are really helping, and maybe in a way we can move on, with some of this and help each other out, knowing what to look out for and everything. Because I would have been lost to that. But there's patterns here. There's patterns here, obviously, and I find it fascinating. This is really 2.0 stuff in my mind. It's not stuff that we're talking about on forums. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting to live through. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think to me that's one of the it's one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to take the forums and bring them onto YouTube, which is the new communication medium. I mean, this isn't TV. This is a back and forth medium. I'm having some really great conversations in my comment section on these things. The people are thoughtful. I try to respect them with how I say it. And, I mean, people are, I'm hearing a lot of the same language. We all realize that we have to be in the real world more. And you got to give contact in the desert that, you're pressing the flesh. But the thing I would just like to be having meetings like that to actually have solutions that we're going to do about the real problem. And because the secret space program is not the real problem that I can see. Life on Earth and the inability to move about freely is one of the biggest problems. I'm not so much concerned about moving freely in space. I want to move freely on a planet that I came to.
Yeah, I think we have some more basic issues to look at.
Yes.
I definitely agree with that. I think we get distracted a lot because it's interesting. There's a lot of really interesting concepts out there, but there's so much more boring basic shit that we need to deal with first.
Yeah. The everything for me is local, I mean, and I know it is for you guys for the most part. My big concerns are, what my market's charging, for fresh food, what the weather is, just, how my neighbor is doing, things like that. And these are my daily concerns and worries. The secret space program, I do believe there's something to it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not going to really affect my life directly. I know that. I can sense that. Maybe for the younger people it might, but we need to worry about how we're going to live on, on our lives. And that's where with you 100% Rad, we need to discuss, these issues, just like Vern talked about, dealing with legal things, basic legal things, how to approach it, where it's necessary and when perhaps you can avoid it. These are the concerns.
Well, for me, I've already sort of made my mind up what I'll be doing, and I'll be doing what the wife tells me at this point. But the bottom line is that's going to make her happy, and it's going to make me happy, and that makes my world a lot easier. And when we're going to get to a point where people are going to say, when there's enough people wandering around happy and they're not millionaires or dickheads, that's when I'm going to be happy. I'm happy most of the time, even though I'm a serious dragon as such. I'm happy most of the time, but I know what I had to do to get to that place, and there's a feeling in me that goes, I don't want people to go through that to get to a place of being happy. So I like to believe that there's an evolving template happening on Earth that's not going to involve shock, death, or whatever, for people to actually start moving into their own power. And so when I envision my mantra or my dream into the world, it's like people moving through stuff fast, and I'm seeing that already. But people moving through their stuff very fast, and I've got one side of me that sits there and I want some shit to happen in the world, so that people wake up, and then there's the other side of me that says, just keep I want to see the boat just cruising through the water onto its destination without any shit happening that's going to have suicides and torture and shit. So I'm sort of sitting in that, what do I really want to happen on a world scale? On the micro scale, I want that happiness. And I know the great joy I can go to, because I've had periods of 2 weeks, or I think 3 months is the longest, where I've just been happy. I haven't had negativity happening within me. It's been around me, and then I come out of that and I go about evolving to the next level. So I know also that there's people that are happy all the time. And I've met them, over years. So they're the same. They're happy. They're joyful, and they hold that. They still grieve. They still think. They're not wobbly messes. So I know it's the potential, and I just hold in my heart and mind that this is the potential in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I want my children, grandchildren to be growing up in a world where it's harmonic, it's synchronistic, it's joyful, it's happy. It's like, I have a tear sitting in my eye now just talking about it. That's what I dream, that's what I believe. And I'll go out in the world tomorrow and I'll be going, oh, fuck, oh my God, but what can I do about it in this moment now? What can and I go about that. I do that to the best of my ability. That's my life now. And I do it where I don't do much, as in going places and that, but I do it when I can, and it's a lifestyle.
Being genuine.
Well, we have, past lives is something very common, and we have lots of people posting things, about past lives and whatever. And it's just, what's curious is nobody ever comes back and talks about, did you know how free we were back then? Do you remember just how free we were?
I remember. That's been my catchword for the last 24 hours. I remember. I don't remember, but I remember, and we watch Sylvia's or the Survivors of Atlantis thread material, and it does trigger memories.
Oh my God!
Somehow for me.
And so did the artwork is so evocative. And
you guys have hinted about this video, and I had to go run off your hints. This is a very important video series. It's got some really compelling evidence that shows us that our timeline has been greatly shifted by 3 people during the Gregorian calendar shift. I think this is really important that people need to look into this. I've never seen it before. I didn't even know it existed, and I found it very fascinating. It's definitely one of the most interesting things I've seen in a couple years.
It's the Gregorian calendar thing is one. The burning of all the ancient books, and then the invention of the Gutenberg press to print out all of the newly revised history. Not to mention, prior to that period, most of the world was illiterate. Literacy was now catching on. So now the literate people who had lived by folk tales that were largely correct about their past now had the official history, and they wanted to use their newfound skill of reading. And in that reading, history got rewritten in our psychology, which is the most important place that it gets rewritten.
Yeah, I think that's in my mind. That's the original conspiracy. It's a very early one that was so widely impactful. It blew my mind hearing that stuff and how reasonable it is, especially with the architecture stuff she's going through and the megaliths and the tool markings and stuff that's just not deniable.
When you've got art that amazing, when you've got and some of it's huge, and some of the remains of whole cities they're finding that have been set out, but there's nothing left now except for charred concrete or whatever. It's like you know that whoever was here was living in a harmonic state to some degree, and I think Radagast has gone into it a couple of times, that mind virus or Sylvia's the parasitical side of it. I lean towards Jose Aguas's material when he says that we're going over this time and time again. Maldek, Mars, now it's Earth, and I firmly believe we're there. We've won. We're cleaning up now. It doesn't feel like it at times, but if the timelines that we were on, I think we would have been into that Mars place again or that Maldek place again, and it hasn't happened. But the evidence that's coming out now, when I first started learning that there's ancient civilizations, was through my own journey in New Zealand, through the Maori culture, then the Maori culture actually having a culture before it. It was the Waitaha, then the Waitaha saying, well, there's actually 3 cultures before us, and we're going back at least 10,000 years. And then there's people saying, well, there's nothing left to those cultures to verify what you're saying. And it's like, well, they didn't leave much because they didn't have to build buildings and weapons and have wars and build defences and forts and things like that. They could live within the environment, within nature, quite happily. And there was, within the Waitaha law, they don't talk of, like 1 million people or 2 million people living in New Zealand. There's 4 to 5 now. They talk of, upwards of 10 million people living here, which is, in our mind now, highly unsustainable. Couldn't happen. But that's in the oral law. It's like there was a lot of people living here in this small place. But then you got to take it another step. Was the sea a lot lower then, so there was more land to live on? So there may be another facet to that story. And when you take it all over the world, everything being sea levels rising, that may have been a start. What that catalysm that actually happened for the sea to rise, they're talking about, Hancock was saying 10 to 12,000 years ago, may have been 1, 2, or 3 massive asteroids, comets, whatever, happened that changed the whole ecology of the world. There may have been reasons for that. That may have been part of the evolving template or whatever at that time. Sort of gone off on a wee rant there.
No, it's very good. That's good points. And New Zealand, New Zealand land is, the continent. I imagine it was larger to some extent, thousands and thousands of years ago. And the idea that it could sustain that many people is just incredible.
Well, you got to remember, you don't have to. The reality is, you don't have to eat much. You've got the sun. You hear about the sun eaters, the sun gazers. They can eat a meal a day. It's a pretty simple phenomenon nowadays that it's been scientifically worked on. So you can have a good ordinary day in your life and just need to eat a small meal, and you can exist on that quite happily. So there's no need to have your 3 meals a day and your snacks and everything else.
Yes.
You can bring what you need for the body and the mind and brain and everything else with a very small amount, because you're getting your energy from the sun. And the sun grows the food and the food comes to you. You're just taking out the middleman to some degree. So the very well may have been. Sorry, Gio.
And being more active as well, not necessarily, as you say, getting energy from the sun, and also what you're doing being lost or at least occupied with that, and then sleeping at night, not being up as like we are nowadays, nocturnal. Right?
Yeah, the sun just came up.
Well, most of these places, they were sun cults, weren't they? Most of them were the archaeologists, whatever they go. They were sun cults. They weren't sun cults, or if they were, at least they had a decent cult leader, the sun.
What's it? 666. It's I'm sorry. 6:33 for you guys. Yeah, I'm looking at 333 on the clock here. Very interesting.
6:33 here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. We're up. The hours that I'm awake nowadays is just incredible. But the amount of energy that it takes to stay awake. You talk about the meals, the smaller meals, and the consumption of things I shouldn't probably be, like coffee and whatnot. We in those days people didn't live that way, and they got up. They might have had a small, maybe a little bit of wine or whatever, water, some bread, went to work, had a big meal, maybe lunch, or after a few hours, and then in the evening it was much smaller, and then they went to bed. It was quite simple. And when you're busy and occupied, from my memory, especially when I was more physically active, I didn't need a lot of food. And I'm only talking about a few years ago, really. I can remember going almost entire days when I was up at Trout Lake, with just eating, maybe a half a sandwich, some good water, and I know it's our society is really, and what they're pushing on us is really not good for us. I don't even want to get into how many medicines I'm on right now. And I know people say, well, you know better than that. Well, yeah, I know better than that, but I've moved to another place in my life where I had to make some, agreements, contracts. And I know that this is part of it. But for a long part of my life, I didn't take medicines and things like that. But this is what I'm going through right now. But I also find that the people that I'm interacting with right now, it's the way it's supposed to be. So, but life is what it is. It's kind of weird. We loop in many ways, every 10, 20 years in our lives, at least the way I'm seeing it from my experience.
Time has been wild lately. When you think about Donald Trump was elected 7 months ago. It's over half a year ago, and it seems like it was, barely, like last week.
Seems like forever for me. But I don't mean it in against Donald, but I mean the way the MSM have played it.
Have they said one thing good about him yet?
No, and they won't. And it's
no.
worse.
When he missiled Syria, they
they did.
Fareed Zakaria said now he's my president.
Yeah, after Syria and the Mud bomb in Afghanistan, for about a week he was cool, and then it went downhill.
Yeah, but that kind of war porn only lasts so long.
It's over the top. It really is. Even for me, with my liberal sympathies, I can't even stand listening to it anymore. What I found interesting today, and I mentioned this to Rad, was that Merkel, obviously she was at some kind of little beer fest, and she made comments about Europe, and especially German Franco, civilization moving away from Britain and the United States because of this last encounter, that they had with Trump. And I found that very interesting because this would be a very normal thing to happen. I'm not troubled by it at all. I think it's about time that Germany, France, and whoever, Italy, whoever, and the Netherlands stepped up and took their continent back, so to speak. So this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And I give credit to Donald Trump for that, because we don't really necessarily need to be as we've been for the last 70 years in Europe, as far as the West is concerned, the United States. But I have no problems being, allies with these countries.
Out the globe, we have 500 bases outside the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
And that's got to cost a little bit of money.
Yeah, it's I have no problems with our military being its size and also being funded. I just don't think we need to be guarding all these countries. I think these countries are more than capable of protecting themselves, at least with the military might that's available out there.
Well, I mean, isn't Germany really kind of like a post-war occupation that is still ongoing?
Yeah, for 70 years. It's and not just Germany. We can include Poland. Well, I mean, we're moving into Poland. We're moving in. We've been in Belgium. We've been in England. We've been in Spain. We in past in France. I mean, we don't need to be there anymore, at least physically, like we are now. And I think this is really what upset Putin so much in Russia. If we found so many times that if you can't defend your own borders, then maybe it's not meant for you to be in charge. Now, I don't want to say that sounds a little warlike, but I look at the Middle East and I see that we are trying to arm nations and like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and whatever. What.
Right now, it seems to me like all we're protecting Europe from is trading with the Russians.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, she's saying it looks like we can't count on the United States and the UK anymore. Well, you mean you're worried that they're going to end their occupation? I mean, if you know the real situation, her words sound ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think there's any problems with Germany's relationships with Russia. I think they can handle them themselves amongst themselves, and there's always been trade between those two nations in particular.
They want more. I mean, they need more trade. I mean, I don't know how many times Russia has to say we don't want to invade. We have a huge country, and we need more people. And war is a waste of money.
Yeah, I do believe that, and I also believe that we're not going to change some of this, what's going on with these corporations. I was watching a video today of a young guy I follow, Gabriel Traveler. He's a friend of mine from out here in the Northwest. He's over in Switzerland now, and he was in a store, and he's been all through Europe for the last month or so, but he was in a store in Switzerland. And all the products, they were all Western products. They were all basically, for the most part, American companies. And the prices for the items were very similar in price to what it cost here in the States, in particular where I'm living. So it tells me there's an agenda. I mean, when you go to Switzerland, I mean, in Britain might be one thing, but when you go to Switzerland and where was he, in Norway, and you start seeing the same products for the same prices, what does that tell you? It is a globalist agenda, obviously. For same corporations distributing and making deals with each other and everything. Now, I'm sure if we went to Russia, we wouldn't see this, but that doesn't mean that the Russians wouldn't want to be, involved with this as well. Now, obviously, there's big disputes between, the Russian government and the Western way of doing things, but I just don't see.
There's McDonald's in Moscow. I mean, it's happening.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're going to be able to stop the corporative. And this, to me, is the biggest. The governments, for the most part, anymore don't mean as much, and I think we're seeing that played out here. And that was another major theme that was in the James Corbett Freeman Fry video that's on the Cosmic Emporium thread. That's why I think it's very important that we need to keep things on a human level, because this is all moving towards corporative AI, and you guys know this better than I. This is where this globalist agenda is heading forward, not governments so much. I think governments are being, what do you say, marginalized in many ways. It's all show now,
governments are populated by people, and people aren't desired because they're unpredictable.
Yeah.
AI is predictable.
But I do recommend that James Corbett video and some of the items he's talking about.
I got it queued up for after the show.
But yeah, I don't see the Russian thing as being what they've made it out to be, and that's a lot coming from me. You know, I've there's a lot of what do you want to say? They're ramping things up, but it's all just a show. I mean, this thing with Jared Kushner now, you know, having a back channel of communication with the Russians. I mean, give me a break. It's craziness. And they're watching everything that the Trump administration does. I mean, I'm talking about the intelligence apparatus. You can't do nothing. I mean, if the president and his minions can't do anything, you know, they're watching everything we're doing, at least in the sense of being able to tap into it. So,
yeah, well, when it comes to domestic surveillance, unless you're really a person of interest, I think most of the people who do the monitoring don't really take too much time out from their free porn watching and high-speed connections. I mean, they've had reports about how much porn gets watched in government offices, and that gives me great comfort.
Yeah. So I mean, and they're not watching us like a lot of, and this is interesting too, because I don't believe a lot of people in the alternative community is being watched or what do you say, recorded, and people need to stop fearing that really, and maybe come on and join the conversation. Okay.
I mean, if you're talking about the U.S. Constitution, you might get looked at. If you're talking about blue avians or Ascension or any other navel gazing distractions, as far as I'm concerned, okay, this group we don't have to watch because they're already dealing with what we put there for them to deal with.
Yeah, very good point.
I think the entire concept there is ass backwards. That's not how we do it. What we do is we collect everything and then we find a person of interest and we go back through what we've collected. So
Exactly.
there is no active watching.
No,
correct.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
We don't care. We collect everything, and then if we need to go back, we'll find it.
And that's why they have that facility in Utah. I mean, that's
absolutely
the whole point.
Yeah. There's so much data to store, so much.
So I mean, if people are worrying about, they already got us. I mean, if there's something in particular,
it's too late. Yeah, don't worry about it. There's no point.
And is it not odd that all these terrorist attacks always target innocent people? I mean, how come? Whatever happened to bombing government offices like a real terrorist would?
That's a good point, and that I've been wondering that myself for the last week after this sad thing in Manchester. I just don't get it.
The answer to me is rather obvious. Other governments don't bomb other governments when their object is to terrorize the people.
Well, if they have this young man and his family and this network that he's supposedly part of under surveillance, and I believe that they did, they knew what he was going to do, or they knew he was about to do it if they didn't even put him up to it in some way or influence.
Right.
And this has been the whole thing through all the, the Boston bombing, and it goes on and on and on. So it is that, and every so often they have to distract and make everyone scared, either to travel or cause stress, and they're draining energy from that, obviously, and that's the archons, and as far as the governments are concerned, it's their little way of containing everything, and like. Now the laptops, all the electronics for traveling, to the U.S. or through the U.S. and in certain, I think there's 10 airports that they've put aside for this new search program that they got going. They're just making it hell to travel, and that's the way they want it. They only want you to travel if it's necessary, and they only want those that are plugged in, meaning into jobs that they control, to be the ones that are traveling. So that's where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're going. And as far as the cashless society, I'm seeing it more and more every day, is when I'm out and about doing transactions. I very seldom anymore, not that I have a lot to put in my pocket, but I very seldom carry more than maybe $10 at a time. I mean, I do have a debit card, and I use that for most of everything I do. And but seeing actual cash, it just in the last dozen years, it's incredible.
Well, I use my debit card when I pay for my groceries. I often will take any, cash.
Yeah.
And that way I have cash in my pocket and don't have to do everything with a credit card.
Right.
Or my debit card, more correctly.
If you need to get gasoline or you need to make a purchase, from, a specific, a small item purchase or something like that. But everything is with debit cards or credit cards or checks or whatnot.
I mean, I think, in the digital age, there isn't anything inherently wrong with a digital currency. It's just who's in control of the system.
Yeah, that's what worries me, right? Who can cut it off, so to speak. Yeah. And they can cut it off, obviously. We know that, the banks can pretty much shut down any time of day. I'm paying like TargeT was saying with the Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is really taken off again, and as well, cliff high is speaking of, so I'm starting to pay more attention to that. So it's only going to get worse. So we do need to look at other alternatives. Now, I do understand that, in local communities, bartering is still there somewhere like Floyd, even in Spokane for that matter, and probably, there in the Virgin Islands in New Zealand. These things can still be achieved by locals, for trading things.
Yeah, so it's very limited though. It's not really an economy per se. Yeah.
The only thing I worry about for islands is everything has to be brought in, and that's what's scary to me about islands. But for that matter, Spokane in a way is kind of an island. We're in the middle of nowhere, out here in the upper Northwest, hundreds and if not 500 or more miles from a lot of locations. So everything has to be brought in. But we do have our food locally grown and stuff. But anything else is pretty, we're isolated. So.
Well, gentlemen, it's become that time.
Yes.
I've got horses to water and feed. They're gonna start getting anxious. So it was excellent talking to you all, and continue the conversation. Just don't mind me.
All right, TargeT. Have a great day out there on the islands.
Be good. Be well. What are we looking at in time? We've been talking for over an hour at least, right? Maybe longer.
Let me look on. We're at 1 hour and 35 minutes.
Yeah, we can end it there since he's leaving.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad to get everyone together. I think this is is the first time we've done this, and all I can say is I do wish those over at PA will consider. I was going to talk to you in private about this, Rad, but I really would like to see you do maybe a podcast with a guest on your Mystic Brew sometime. Have you thought about that? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm going to see if I can get, Randy Kramer is a friend of mine, through, having a connection with him, and we've spoken for hours. I love Randy Kramer. The last time I actually approached him, I said, hey, Randy, could I just have you on a show, and instead of talking about Mars, we talk about you? Because I don't know if you know his story. He's his genes are patented. One of the things, according to the story, okay, even face to face to me, he talks about that he's got the good health. He's got a real. I mean, if you talk to him one on one, that man is an intelligent man. I mean, you can feel that he's been tweaked. Which of course,
he's genuine. Yes.
For somebody like myself, it's a pleasure to talk to a really hyper intelligent person. Because we really can kind of go flying, and it's really a joy. And so I asked him that question. I said, could we come on and just it be about Randy Kramer instead of about Captain K and Mars?
Yes.
And he goes, I'd love to do it, but he goes, people might, if I'm on a show of yours and I don't talk, if I don't do my greatest hits, people will be very unhappy.
Well, maybe you can convince them otherwise to rethink it because just put out there. I have a small following, but it is on the alternative forums, and let's do it. So he might engage with you.
I will ask him again. I mean, it was just I thought it, and because I like him. I mean, I would love to expose people to Randy Kramer, the super, like the human, and get a chance to, like, he has political views on the Constitution. He gave a really good thing about the difference between ethics and morals. I mean, this guy has a lot to say. He's a Marine. He's passionate about our country. I would love to go there with him. Because I have gone there with him for hours. We didn't talk about any Mars or secret space program, although we did. We talked a little bit about Mars because I asked him some questions, and it was very interesting. And one of the and to see him and to see him like be there. I mean, a couple of things you could see he was there. Okay, so again, that's why I said I believe anything Randy Kramer has ever told us, as far as I can tell, is he is telling us the truth that's in his head.
Yeah, he seems very genuine. I've listened to him. James has interviewed him, and everyone that's ever spoken to him and you're obviously echoing what I've heard. So I'd be definitely there enthralled to hear him come on and speak with you. But CW, others, I would love to have you engage with. And like I said, I was really fascinated to hear Shannon, St. Teresa, moderator member at Project Avalon, come on a little bit with you guys the other night on CW's Google invite, and I'm sorry I couldn't get on there, but that's just as well. You guys covered a lot of good points, so I would like to see others come on and join on the Cosmic Emporium if they would be kind to. Especially with just you, Vern, or TargeT, talking with those members. I'm sure you'd make them more than comfortable, and we could hear some other perspectives. How they're feeling about things. I really can't emphasize that. I'd love to hear some individuals over at PA, especially even those that are not well known. Maybe a new member, or. So
well, this is your. I mean, again, this is YouTube is the community TV. If you're an unknown and you'd like to kind of make change that a little bit, come on the show. You will suddenly be somebody who's known, but maybe a lot of people don't want to be. Maybe they like that low key. I mean, again, when you get before a camera, you want to, you want to have something to say. It's, writing a few sentences, a sentence, a paragraph, or whatever, and in your own time is very different than speaking in real time. And it's, it's a skill, and I understand that. But it's just, we're 10,000 at PA, 1,000 plus at or more at TOT, and we have less than two handfuls. I mean, that's a lot of shy people.
Yeah. And there's nothing to fear really, because, everyone that we've engaged with and everyone I've spoke to, they pretty much, after they've been bitten, it's not so much that they are dying to come back, but they have no problems with it. Matter of fact, they find it quite welcoming and refreshing. And I know Vern. Vern's still there, aren't you, Vern?
No,
I know
he left.
He left. I know Vern feels that way. I just know it's there, and we need. You don't have to speak about the forum in particular that you're on, or for that matter, anyone that's running the forum, so to speak.
No, help us with the new game plan. We need a plan. I mean, I want to change the conversation for what the NW has done to us today to what we have talked about and are planning for tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, what did we do today? We have to start focusing on ourselves, because where energy goes, where attention is, energy follows. So everybody's tracking them, and we're like we're like an audience for the fuckery of the NWO.
Yeah.
And we can either be people just have to get that perspective, and I keep on trying to make it, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know the success that's being made with trying to get people to think about us doing something. Let us make the news with what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I know it's only been 6 months or so since, you've been doing videos now for a couple of years now, but
2 years and 5 months.
Okay. And it might have, you've put a lot of effort into it. And with just the 6 months that we've been doing these podcasts, it's grown, maybe not as fast as we would have liked, but I do see potential, and I do feel that others need to join us, and I can only emphasize that. So those on PA, please contact Rad or myself. I'll give you my email. Mine is Sangiovanni, spelled the way I spell my name, sangiovanni@hotmail.com. If you're interested in joining Rad and myself or others, send me an email. And if not, pass it, through a message to someone that can reach me. But it's SANGIOVONNI@hotmail.com. And seriously.
Excellent. Which I have spoken to CW, because CW was saying the other night during he was doing something with himself and Raksha or something. It was just the two of them, and I was there, on the chat, and he was saying, please, why doesn't somebody invite me to the show? So in his comment section, I went, this is a public invite. I'm inviting you publicly to be on, one of my videos, and I think it's going to happen. So we'll find out. He has a wife, he has kids, he has responsibilities, and he has his show. So he might have to, might have to find out, okay, when am I not doing my thing and have enough time to go join you? But I had a little conversation with him tonight. He was busy. Said, catch you another time. But you could say I'm pursuing that, because CW has worked hard to get his audience, and he said something very profound about Corey Good, and I think when he said it, I went, oh my God, that's completely right. And what he had said was that Corey comes from a Christian background, and apparently Corey's like on a 3-year kind of thing here, and he goes, I'm predicting right now that when all this is over and Corey has made his nest egg, he's going to go back to his roots and become a born again Christian.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because everything I'm getting from Corey in his body language, and even through his dialogue on his videos, is that his heart's not in this, and I don't believe he's comfortable with this. Maybe this is something he's going through. Maybe he needs to get this out of himself for something that's happened to him in the past. Maybe his story is, for some part true, but I do believe that you touched on a very poignant point with the Christianity thing. I don't think he's very comfortable in this genre of exposure, and that could well happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Personally, I think if he was not married with children, he might not be taking this road.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know, but I do believe that a lot of these decisions are being made, because of economics, as well as being, what do you say, his ego being inflated by David Wilcox and others, and maybe he got himself in a hole and he's still digging. Who knows?
I have to absolve him of ego, because when I saw him on something he did with David, he sat in a chair and David almost spoke to him like he was the Svengali, and then you have that, I mean, in many ways, when you look at his face, his eyes, his body language, it's
He's
like
not there. He's not there.
He's phoning it in.
Yeah, he's not there. And this is why I said, at least in our last podcast about, with Bill Ryan, about Bill Ryan was, don't worry about it. To me, it doesn't really matter. He's just there he's only going to be here a short time and gone. And I do believe that. Maybe he will do some ventures, in Hollywood, comic books, whatever, maybe some short books. But they're no real threat. They're no real threat to the community. Maybe they are a thorn in the butt to Bill Ryan, in regards to some of the history on the forum and causing him some grief, and also with, between him and Christine. But that's something totally different than most of us. But I'm not worrying about. I have a sense, and I know, I believe you do too, that Gaia.com is the big thing that Bill is concerned about, as well as ourselves. In regards of causing problems for the community. But I think we can really even go around that, because unless they got talent and if Corey's the best they can come up with, besides all the speakers of the ancient aliens and all that stuff, they're going to have to come up with some new material, because the community pretty much there's been no new whistleblowers in my mind, and there's nothing that's come down the pike in the last 5 years or so that really means anything or is really progressing us, anywhere. I mean,
I would like to see the next exciting thing that happens in our community is that we start getting active and actually doing things and getting together and making plans for our own future. I mean, where we stop waiting for the next person to come along, either save us or entertain us, and we decide to save and entertain ourselves. I play music. I'll entertain you.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because I think, well, if you're going to have a conference, why don't you just have a reunion of membership, so to speak, of some of these forums? You can get together at a venue, whether it be in wherever, in America or England or wherever. But this gets back to the ground crew thing of getting ground crew members together, which was a little slow.
I found Floyd because we had a Global Mission of Peace gathering, and a friend and one of our members had found this. It was a Chinese medicine place, and they have like massage rooms and a big hall, and they had a kitchen. So we were able to rent it for a weekend for a very nominal fee. We had use of the kitchen, and so we had like people who paid to be there, but then there were some locals who wanted to come. So we said, if you want to come, please bring food. So these people, one of the people owned their own bakery, mound of all kinds of organic breads. The kitchen was used. People were bringing in vegetables. So we had all fresh cooked organic food, organic bread, and this was how the people bartered for entry, and it turned it into an extravaganza. And they had a big kind of like meeting or dance hall, and we all had our sleeping bags and mattresses, and we were all sleeping in a one room together. Do you know how awesome that is?
And that was in Floyd, right?
Yeah.
It is, right. And that tells you, people living on the East Coast, within, from New York, or let's say it's drivable, from
we had a guy who came from Chicago.
Well, I'm sure people would, and I would even go back east for that. So, if there was a large influx, and when I say a large, 100 people, maybe even more, maybe would be nice, but 100 people of people that I know and have interacted with for years, I would love to go to something like that. And
given that again, where it is and how much it would cost, if the whole if the real important thing was to make sure, in other words, where it isn't so much about us making money, where the whole purpose is to get people together, and the whole purpose of charging is to make sure all the costs are covered.
Yes.
And then if you have any extra, it's nice to make a little bit, but the whole idea is you actually look at it, and it isn't what will the market bear. It's like, how much do we have to ask them to bear?
I mean, a good example is even over at Trout Lake. I have friends that have a farm that have a big venue, believe it or not, in their barn, one of their barns, for having something like is what you're speaking. And the acreage is there, the accessibility is there. So, I mean, you can do these things in parts of the country and make it a fun thing, without all these.
We had 4 or 5 different performances, all live music,
Yeah.
local bluegrass people,
Yeah.
people who played other things. I mean, it was amazing, and maybe people will hear this, and maybe in the comment section go, "Hey, Radagast, when are you going to do that?" And then I'll start investigating, because it certainly could be done, and maybe it's something that we should just say,
That's
okay,
what I mean.
we're going to do
You
it.
can do it on the East Coast, you can do it on the West Coast, we can do it in the South. It can be done, and maybe it is a little late in the summer, or I should say late in the year, mid-year to think about it this season.
No, I pulled together that last gathering in like 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Well, then maybe, yeah, why not? I mean, weather's good until October, and for the most part. So these things can happen.
And what's nice is because of the elevation where we're at, like 2,000 plus, even on a roasting summer day, it's still got usually a nice breeze, and the nights are gorgeous.
Yes.
I mean, in the lower lands, closer to sea level, it's a little. The air is thick. There is no thick air up here, man. The air is great.
Right. I know it's beautiful there. You're close to the Blue Ridge. I mean, it's easily accessible.
The Blue Ridge Parkway is a couple of miles from me.
Yeah, that's most beautiful.
I mean, like 5 miles maybe.
And it's accessible to Richmond as well as the DC area, and it's close to highways 80 and 95, so it's easy to get to. I know that, and so that would be a wonderful thing. I would really look forward to something like that.
And just to put a little new age woo on it, Floyd is mentioned in the Casey readings, because during the Casey readings, supposedly the 1990s were going to be a time of earth changes, and that so people had written in saying where are some safe places to stay. So there were any number of places, but he mentioned Floyd, Virginia by name. And the interesting thing about Floyd, Virginia is how much white quartzite we have here. I mean, we have boulders, like you'll see, like, the Black Angus cows, and instead of regular boulders coming out, there are these big, huge white quartzite boulders. It's everywhere. Everybody has white quartzite, and if you dig around here, you end up with regular rock crystals. I mean, crystals are all over the place here.
Well, and that's interesting, because just south of you, just across the state line in North Carolina, down where Shadow Self Brook and Andy live, that's there's huge areas for quartz and crystals and everything. So there's a whole vein that runs obviously down through that way. So
we're about 3 hours north of Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so I just, again, giving who we're talking about a little woo factor. This is a high energy place. It's not like, Sedona vortex type stuff.
Yeah.
It's it's more of an ambient, where if you're here, you can just feel like kind of something sweet and nourishing.
It's a beautiful part of the country. I know that. And I know that you have a little bit of music history that goes along with Floyd too. You might even want to.
Well, yeah. Well, Uncle Butchie, the Butch Robbins. I mean, one of the best banjo players in the world. I mean, seriously. I mean, when he points me to other banjo players that he thinks, it's like, Butch, if I had a choice to play with them, I'd still pick you, because you're not stuck in a kind of a rut. You play an Appalachian instrument. And you play but the music he writes and the way we approach it isn't quite so Appalachian or Appalachian.
And it's you have a festival there, don't you, in the summertime?
Floyd Fest.
Yeah.
Yeah, Floyd Fest is a real big deal. And again, like anything that really gets popular, it gets a little squirrely. Again, it gets all about the money is what it is.
But it's still not like
It's
like
huge.
some of these other areas,
No, it's sweet. It's good for the area. People go there, they love it. It is very well run. Okay, I mean it's really well run, and what it is. It's largely the local musicians
Yeah.
who want to be there, and they even know this is a guy that the guy who books them is like they might be drinking with him. But when it comes to business, even if you got a good band, nobody will recognize you. Who cares? We're good. No. We need recognition. And so there's, and meanwhile, all the little bands are the ones that helped make Floyd Fest what it was when they didn't have the money to pay the big boys. So when it came time to kind of reciprocate and like show that you're really part of the community, no, all of a sudden they grew bigger than the community, and now it's like the community can come, but you'll pay like everybody else.
So my suggestion is for those out there listening and they have their computers handy, look it up. Floyd, Virginia. It might not be much to look at in a sense of metropolis, but the countryside is beautiful. And anyone who's been through that part of Virginia knows this. And if you haven't, you need to be there. Go there sometime. But let's hope maybe we can do something like that. I'm going to keep that in the back of my head.
I'm going to keep it in the front of my head. I mean, because it'll be fun. I mean, if for the main reason of like, I mean, I'm going to put my money and my labor where my mouth is, and like saying, "Oh, why doesn't somebody do something?" Okay, I'm raising my hand.
Well, I'm with you 100% there. I mean, I don't see why we can't think that way. And that would be a wonderful outlet to physically meet up with a bunch of people. And it goes hand in hand to what you've been speaking of, the renaissance of Floyd, as far as, creating something locally there anyway with other locals in that community. So, but I'm very positive about some of the stuff we talked about. So again, a shout out to anyone who is out there listening. Please come on and join us. Send me an email, contact Rad, contact TargeT, whoever, Vern, we're open to it. And it's very informal. Rad is an excellent host, and he knows how to conduct interviews. He's been doing this professionally, let's say. So let's do it. Please come.
Yeah, I'm willing to do meet you on Skype or if I have a Zoom, and which is what Giovanni's coming.
Yeah, go ahead and mention how we go about this anyway. That we have a what do you want to say, a pre-talk. Go ahead and get.
Okay, well, by getting a pre-talk, first of all, I find out what you're interested in, and again, I use my neurolinguistics to examine the language that you use to find out where you live, what you want to do, and then I use what the data I get to try and put you in the best light and pull out of you what you actually want to through your language. I heard that you want to let out.
Yeah. And we do this through a Skype or either through Zoom, and you can explain how that comes about. We can send you a site, let's say a conference room where you can just go to and join us through your computer. All you need is an audio, but it's good to have a video camera as well, so you can interact with us face to face. But that's not to be made necessarily into the video. But if we go on to do a podcast with you, you have the option to either just be on audio or both audio and video.
Shelley and I have done a Mystic View, and she and her, on a show, and she's just like you, but she was using her iPhone. Yeah, I've done shows with her on an iPhone or a tablet or something, but something really humble.
Just like what TargeT was doing earlier. Yeah. So those that are, don't have the computer or, that, you can use your phone, your smartphone. So it can be arranged. It's not that difficult. And you'll find it very easy to interact with us. And nothing is recorded. If you don't like what's being recorded, it won't show up. We won't post it. Rad won't put it out there. I mean, if you have problems with it, and say, I don't want this to go out. We'll
No
honor it.
gotchas. There won't be any gotchas. I mean,
Yes.
again, we're starting anew, and as we go forward as humans, we enter in agreements. So at the end of a show, do you agree that this is okay to go up? And if you say no, we don't. That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how humans do it.
Because this is really amongst friends or soon to be friends, so to speak. Because there's no sponsors, there's no advertisements on any of these podcasts or anything. So it's not about making money at all. So
Although I
that's
should probably say, if you like an incense that nobody will be offended by, I'm telling you, I've done the test of time. I'm not any money, but Sai Baba Nag Champa is some of
Is
the
this new? Is
finest
this new?
incense, and it's all natural stuff. And I mean, most people, they say incense, and they're used to that stuff that smells like some kind of cologne. No,
Yeah.
this is all ground herbs, and anybody I've exposed it to
Say
loves
it
it.
again. Say it again, because I might have.
It's the Satya Sai Baba Nag Champa, and I bought it like this. I guess it comes. How many do I? Well, there's 12 of them in this box, and I think this box cost me, I don't know, maybe $10 at the most or something.
Now I don't have you on video right now, so I can't see what you're showing.
Oh, sorry about that. You know what? I'm gonna. Okay, everybody else saw it. I'm gonna end this. I'm gonna say. I'm gonna do a little closing music here, and
Yeah.
then we're gonna and then you hang out, and we'll thank you. God bless you all. I know I'm gonna put Giovanni on there. I know he'd like to tell you God bless you also. Stay sane, and we'll see you next time. This is a 2-hour one. I hope it was that it's chock full of goodies for you and inspiration. And we will see you next time.
See you, folks. God bless. Okay.